totally useless.
Wait, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I turned around. You'll be next, but I'm hard in the back. I'm sorry.
Robert, I've been aware of you for a long time. I read your letters in the Militant. I'm in sympathy with you. But what I wanted to say is, it is so important that you differentiate to the public between arts and selling T-shirts with expressive matter on it. Until Tony pointed out at our board meeting that about 30% of the so-called art vendors in the park are really craft vendors and are not legal according to the courts. If you would emphasize that, I mean, all along, I was under the impression that everything was considered art, including the necklaces, including the feathered hats, the baseball caps, etc. I think it's incumbent upon you to press that point that a lot of the congestion in Union Square is not due to the artists that you describe as artists, but to the really non-artists, the non-legal artists. And that's why I tried to interrupt you, because the point is not that we don't approve of artists. We are confused by the people who block our way. And it wasn't until Tony pointed it out that I realized they aren't the artists that you represent. And that is so important that you make it clear to the public that the artists who clog the streets are not the artists you represent, but these vendors who pretend to be artists. I don't know
Yes,
if I'm making myself
clear.
clear.
So I guess the thing is, whenever you have your press, I don't know if you're reluctant, but you don't want to get into a fight with the people, or you do
Not
express
at all.
it.
I've been the head of this group for 16 years. I've made it clear in hundreds of public statements, in many articles in the Villager, I don't represent general merchandise vendors. On the other hand, there's a big difference between what you or I consider art, and we're free to have any views we want, and what the courts or the city officials consider art. A legal definition of art is provided by the federal courts. At the same time, the pendant you're wearing, it wouldn't be considered art by the city, but if you go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, they probably have more jewelry on display than paintings. Pottery is not considered art by the city. Pottery existed before paintings, before sculpture, certainly before anything that we consider high art. There was pottery. People made, let me finish. People took feathers and shells and made all kinds of things when we were running around in skins and living in caves. So we can all be free to come up with our own definitions of art based on our preferences, but as far as legally, what's considered art that you can sell under the First Amendment in New York City, it's limited. Paintings, prints, photographs, sculptures. There's no jewelry, there's no pottery, there's no hats. The only clothing you can sell legally is a T-shirt with a political message. That's not because I asked for that. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled that a T-shirt with a political message is protected by the First Amendment. We didn't make the rule, not even the city officials did, the Supreme Court did, so the city has to follow that. That's why you'll see T-shirt vendors in the park.
Thank you, I think that's pretty clear. No, we're going to move on because we have something to go. Yes?
Is there, what would you have to do to get the police to enforce this and get rid of the artists who are messing things up for you?
Well, I'll put it to you this way. There is no lack of potential enforcement. I was the first artist, according to Adrian Benebe, the first artist to ever sell on the High Line. They had me in handcuffs within 1 hour. The next weekend I went back there. They had 10 PEP officers there who told me, "We thought you'd be coming again. We're here to arrest you." So clearly, if they can waste all that manpower, and by the way, they had to settle that case a week later. The park commissioner apologized to me, and what he said literally was, "I didn't know what I was doing." Well, he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing, and he knows what he's doing in Union Square Park, which is deliberately not enforcing any of the vending laws, so that someone like you, who's well-meaning and likes street artists, will still feel outraged and think it's probably a good thing to get rid of some of them, because there really are too many. He wants to obscure the issue in every way he can, whether it's what he calls us, whether it's his claim that there are no laws to enforce, whether it's the idea that there's a public safety hazard. And frankly, even the t-shirt vendors and the jewelry vendors, I'm not asking for them to be there, but even those people are not causing a public safety hazard, and if they are, they could be arrested just for being there, let alone if they're doing something extreme. They're blocking your way. If this is the path, they got their table in the middle of the path, you have every right to call 311, 911, go to the PEP officer that's there and have them do something about it. We urge you to do that, including if a street artist selling paintings is obstructing something, if they've done something to offend you, if they're blocking a bench you want to sit on, if they kicked your dog, call the police, have them arrested. We support that. What we don't support is communities being deceived by the Parks Department into imagining that street artists are somehow overrunning our parks and making it unsafe for people to be there.
Thank you. Jeffrey?